I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us on this American Friends of Sheba Medical Center webinar. Sheba Medical Center has borne the heaviest medical burden of this conflict. Since October 7th, Sheba has received the majority of the wounded, is doing the rehab for the majority of the injured soldiers, and as you will hear shortly, has received the majority of the hostages. We are really honored today, and I'm proud to have Dr. Itai Pesach with us as a guest to talk about the Sheba's process with the hostages. Dr. Pesach is the director of the Edmund and Lily Safa Childrens Hospital at Sheba Medical Center. Under his leadership, the Middle East's largest and most comprehensive children's hospital treats children from Israel, Gaza, the West Bank, the Greater Middle East, and all over the world. Dr. Pesach completed his residency in pediatrics at Sheba and specialized in immunology and allergy at the Boston Children's at Harvard Medical School. Following his return to Israel, he specialized in pediatric intensive care, where he continues to practice as a senior pediatric intensive care physician. Dr. Pesach is a member of Sheba's prestigious Talpiot Medical Leadership Program and is a renowned researcher and consultant to startup companies developing unique technologies for intensive care. Sheba Medical Center is the crown of Israel's medical and health ecosphere, and Dr. Pesach is the diamond in that crown. Thank you, Dr. Pesach, for everything you do. So we'll just go right into it, and thank you for making the time for us. Why were you and Safa Children's Hospital chosen to receive all the hostages, even the adults?
So that's kind of an interesting story on how reality happens, because when October 7th hit us, despite the fact that we are always prepared for mass casualty events and for disaster events, it really took all of us to the extreme of what we would need to do, both here at Sheba and around the country. It was and still are very dramatic times. But the first, I would say, 3 days were really like a state of war also within the hospital, because we had received a lot of injured people, a lot of casualties from around the different areas where the fighting was going on, and the kibbutzim and the settlements on the border, as well as soldiers, and that kind of drew all the resources of the whole medical center, both the adult hospital and also the pediatric hospital. We received several children, and we also supported our peers that treated the adults. We sent teams from the pediatric hospital to support the emergency departments, the operating rooms, the ICUs. But after the first 3 days, more or less, we got back to our, I would say, sort of a routine, in the sense that there were no more, the stream of casualties has reduced to, I would say, the level that is not very different than what we are used to. Despite the fact that the war is going on, this is a huge medical center, so receiving 10, 15, maybe even 20 injured casualties a day is not a burden that changes the routine in a 2,000-bed hospital. Getting 100 or 150 in one day, that's more challenging. But that stopped after the first few days. And so the pediatric hospital returned more or less to its normal activity. Fortunately, there were no more new pediatric casualties that were pouring in. And on the other hand, the regular routine activity of the pediatric hospital sort of reduced, as it happens a lot of time in war times. Because kids and parents, when kids don't go to school, when kids don't play outside, when kids don't meet each other, they are less sick and less injured. And so the activity for us started to kind of reduce. And we started thinking, what's going to be our role in this war? Because it's not going to be, hopefully, a pediatric major event. And we immediately understood that there are children that were kidnapped, that are held hostage, and we have to prepare for the return. We thought it's going to take just a few days before the kids would be returned. We did not imagine that someone with even a vicious terrorist organization like Hamas would even imagine to hold children captive for a prolonged period. So we thought that we have just a few days to prepare, and we wanted to be as ready as we could to receive these children and provide the very specific and delicate care that they would need when they return. And we started with the process of preparing for that, and I'll detail that in a minute. But we really created a lot of, gathered a lot of know-how and protocols, because nobody has done this before, not in Israel and nowhere around the world. Any healthcare provider had to face this type of challenge of receiving children that were abducted and held by a terrorist organization for in such dire conditions, and after such a horrific experience during the day of their abduction, and also as time passed, with more and more time kept or spent in captivity. So we started to prepare, and since, as I said, the rest of the organization was heavily busy with the war and with the operations that are, that the hospital needed to take in order to prepare, it was just natural that within the structure, we kind of took over the mission of preparing for the return of the hostages, and that was actually what we did. We found also a lot of professional reasoning around it, not just the operational reasoning. Very early on, we understood that when the captives would return, they would need to be received in different conditions, not in an emergency department, not in an adult hospital ward, but in a more protected environment, quieter, with happier, with better infrastructure. And the pediatric hospital that I run is set for that, to reduce anxiety, to reduce concern. That's part of what we do in our day-to-day medical care that we give the children and their families. Again, being able to encompass a family, not just a patient, is something we do every day. And we knew we're going to need to care for the families that were abducted, but also for the families that were left behind and will need to be here while their loved ones return. So it was kind of the natural choice that the pediatric hospital is going to run this mission, and indeed that's what ended up happening.
So did you receive the hostages as is, or did you make changes to the physical space at Safra to prepare for them?
Yeah, so we had done a very thorough process of preparation. First, we had to study and again find out what are the evidence and what are the right way to receive people that have underwent, children and adults that have underwent such a horrific experience, especially to prevent further damage as they return, because we know that part of the psychological damage or the post-trauma effects of such events happen not just during the events, but also in the process and later when people talk about it or relive the occasion. That might have significant impact on their chances to develop PTSD or to suffer from acute symptoms. And so we had to study and learn and prepare ourselves in the right way to receive the hostages. As I said earlier, there is not a evidence-based protocol on how to do that. So we had to consult within experts that we have here within our institution, and we have some of the world's leading people in treating trauma, both in children and in adults. Just for example, one of our leading psychologists that work here at Safra has been responsible for the emergency response to school shooting events in the US nationally. And she led the effort in many significant events that the US has undertaken or suffered from, and was part of the protocol for that. So we had her knowledge. We consulted with our peers around the world that had dealt with, I would say, sort of similar situation. For example, people that had treated girls that were abducted in Africa by the Boko Haram terrorist organization, children that were abducted in Mexico by drug cartels, people and children, so people that treated them, people that from other disaster areas like Bosnia and the Ukraine. So we gathered as much data as we could and as much evidence as we could as to what would be the appropriate approach, and we created those protocols. Some of them included also the conditions. So, for example, we wanted to have areas where the light is slightly dimmer because we knew that some of the captives were held underground and with very little light. We wanted to be able to sort of seclude them from outer, like from the press, from the crowds, and only gradually expose them. So we had to find a place in the hospital that's going to allow for sort of a separated area that we can kind of control who's coming in and coming out. We wanted the environment to not be very aggressive. You know, a hospital room in many cases it could be a stressful place. So we picked areas within the pediatric hospital that are not like that, that have different colors, different lighting, different furniture. We also replaced a lot of the furniture of the hospital with more something that looked like a boutique hotel room than it would a patient room. And we kept, in parallel, we also didn't know what's going to be the medical condition of the returnees when they come back. So we kept the ability to provide advanced care. We maintain this ability certainly also now, waiting for the captives that have not returned yet. So we can interchange between a hotel room and an ICU room within a few minutes. So we will be able to actually provide both the medical care that's needed, but also the safe psychological environment that we wanted. We thought that they would want special food after being straddled for a prolonged period of time. So we had created a kitchen, a chef's kitchen within that compound that can provide basically any dish they desire, and that actually came into play later. We knew that they would want, for example, the women that came back, we wanted to provide them with a haircut, facial care, manicure, so they would be able to feel as if they are human beings later. So within the ICU, where we created that environment, we also created the spaces to provide those services because we knew that's something that they would love to experience when they return. Again, not immediately, but within the time they spend in the hospital. We even had discussions if the hospital is going to be the right place to receive them. And that was a decision that was taken both here, but also in higher levels. First, because we didn't know what their medical situation is going to be, but also we thought that the people that are most experienced in treating victims of violence of any sort, at the end, are medical providers and allied health professions, and here are the places where we have the most experience in that. So more or less, that's kind of the idea between or behind the pediatric hospital being responsible for this, and also why it was actually done here, because we already had all that ideas and infrastructure and a little bit different environment.
So I visited Sheba a number of times during the war, and I also noticed at Safra that you put up screens, you covered windows and doors, and did you do things to create privacy from the press?
Right. It was not just from the press. The press is a very significant part of that, but I'm sure some of the people listening have seen the pictures of what happens in Israel whenever a captive comes back. For example, if they leave the hospital and go home, there are just scores of people in the streets with the Israeli flags waving and cheering for them. And there's just a spontaneous burst of joy and happiness whenever any one of these captives come back. They become celebrities without choosing to be celebrities. And we thought, and we still think, that this exposure very early on can be harmful psychologically to them. And we wanted to maintain their privacy and especially their ability to choose who's going to see them, who's going to talk to them, who's going to interact with them. And this is why we created this safe zone, safe area, where they could be isolated from the environment and gradually exposed to the environment. Not to mention the fact that there has been a lot of things that they needed to learn when they came back that we didn't want them to learn in an uncontrolled way. So I'll just give you one example. We had a lot of bad news to tell some of the captives. Captives that came back after the first, like in the first deal, after 50 days or so. A lot of them didn't know that there has been other people taken. They thought that they are the only ones. They didn't know that a lot of settlements was struck. They thought their kibbutz was the only one that was assaulted. They didn't know that some of their family members have died. They didn't know that some other family members are in captivity. So we wanted to deliver those news to them in a very controlled and safe manner, and in the best way possible. Not that there's a good way to tell these kind of things, but we still wanted to create a very, again, I would use the word controlled environment. And in order to do that, we had to isolate them, at least at the beginning. We have learned it evolved throughout the process. We now know that we still need to protect them to some extent, but also we give them a lot of choice. I don't know if you have seen, but the last 4 hostages that came back, what they really wanted is to interact with their friends and their families. And so we allowed that very early on, much beyond what we assumed that is when we were preparing, that is going to be the case. So this is a continuing learning, continued process of evolution of what is the exact solution that is appropriate for each captive as they come back. And we tailor what we offer in the best way possible, again, per the specific captive that is returning.
When there was bad news to deliver, was it delivered by Sheba staff, or did you try to get their family and friends, or was it a mix?
So it was a mix. So we had, even in the preparation process, but also as we went along, we had discussed this with the family members and came up with a plan. This is not different than breaking other bad news that we unfortunately have to do every day here at the hospital. So we use the same strategies and the same techniques. In some cases, we felt, and the family felt, it's going to be better if this comes from the closest family member or someone else. And in some other cases, the family just couldn't, could not take it upon themselves to be the ones that carry those news. And then we help them, as we do, again, in many cases, when we need to break bad news. Again, that's part of the rationale of why bringing the hostages into a hospital is a good strategy, because we have those capabilities, we have those strategies, we have those techniques and experience that we could harness and tailor in a way that's going to meet the needs of the captives. Again, that's very personalized. That's very different from one situation to another. It's very different to talk to a teenager whose parents were murdered and he came back from captivity than to talk to a 84-year-old woman that you have to talk to her about her kids that were murdered. So different strategies and different solutions.
How did you choose the staff that were going to be working in the area where the hostages would come back to?
So you can imagine that volunteering for the mission was not a hard thing to achieve. Everybody at Sheba, and I think everyone in the country, wanted to take part in this effort. I actually received calls from friends of mine and from people that I know from around the country that work in other hospitals, begging me to integrate them into the team, because all of us see this as the most important mission that we can have as people that care for other people. So we just focused as we do in any situation, on professionalism and who has the best chances to succeed, who has the most experience. And as I said, some of the most experienced people in the country are part of the Sheba staff. For example, we have psychiatrists who specialize in trauma that treat soldiers like POWs from like the previous wars. We have a lot of providers that care for women that have been assaulted. We have special teams that care for children that are victims of violence. So we have a lot of people with a lot of experience and know-how, and we cherry-picked, I would say, like the best people from each of these services within the organization. It's about 120 people on the captive care team, I would say. And after picking them, we also train them for a very significant period and with a very significant program to prepare them and to finite the protocols and the approach. We used a lot of simulation. We actually simulated multiple times the return of different returnees based on intel that we had, based on the story of the actual captives, to train the team in delivering those bad news. In what is the first thing you say to a captive that comes off the helicopter? Do you hug them? Do you touch them? What's the tone of voice that you're going to use? What are the first words? What will you do when he asks you, why is my mother not here to meet me? Okay, what you going to tell them? Okay, so we had planned and practiced this over and over until we came up with the best solution. All of that was done, when one member of the team is practicing, or a team of 2 or 3 people is now practicing, the rest are watching through. Like, that's our way in anything, not just in preparing for the captives. And
so you use Sheba's master simulation capabilities.
Exactly. We use the Master Simulation Center. They are the ones that created this program. We debriefed each of these events. We learned. We, again, worked on the protocol. So we got to what we thought is the perfect solution. And along the way, we also saw who's the team member that's most appropriate to do that. Who's going to be the psychologist that is going to meet the captive that we thought had, I don't know, was sexually abused in captivity. So what's going to be our response? What would we do if we see a captive that comes off the helicopter and she's pregnant? Who's going to be the team that takes over? Okay, so we were ready for each of those scenarios. Again, as we are ready to any medical scenario in our day-to-day life. That's part of the Sheba way. That's part of the excellence that we try to maintain. And I think that's part of the reason we're one of the best hospitals in the world, is that we take care of the very, very small details. So we created that know-how. We, of course, shared it with anyone in the Israeli medical system. We're not the only institution that was put on preparedness to receive hostages, and a lot of the hostages did not come to us. So we shared everything that we did. We learned also from our peers around the country. And I think, all in all, the Israeli medical system was and does and still does a very good job in those initial few days when the returnees come and they get very good care. It's very, very hard to maintain that later, but we're working also on that front.
I want to ask you about that in a little bit. Since all the hostages are known, are you also prepared with things like medications or eyeglasses or things like that for each hostage?
There's a lot of sensitivity around that because the army and the country does not want to create expectations, I would say, by saying prepare for the return of this and that, like a specific person, because immediately that creates the expectation for the family and for the society. And so we only receive the details, also the medical details of the captives, once we know for 100% that they are on our way to us. But there is like a national effort in preparing. So there's a medical record prepared for each of the captives where we know, in general, for each of them what they would need. You gave the example of eyeglasses, so there are prescriptions ready. And if and when they come to us, then we know where to approach to receive those prescriptions. The medications are not an issue. There's not a medication shortage within the Sheba Medical Center, so that's not a big issue. And there's also an amazing response from the public. So when in the first wave of captives that came back, we needed a specific prescription of glasses that was not available because something has changed with the captive. It took less than an hour of some of the, like, someone that knows someone, you know, the Israeli way. It was the middle of the night. They came at like 2 a.m. and we needed a specific prescription. By 3:30, optometrist that is just knows someone, and someone called him, went back to his store, prepared the special prescription, drove all the way to Sheba and brought us the glasses even without us needing to ask for it, because there is so much empathy within the public and within the Israeli nation, and so much everybody really wants to help. That was really amazing, like, to see.
Beautiful. What was the most surprising or shocking thing you've experienced with hostages returning?
But it's a very difficult question. I probably prefer not to answer the second part of it, like talking about what the most shocking, because the stories that we've heard, each of them is so difficult and so hard that I don't think I can choose which is the most shocking thing. And definitely, if I would have chosen, I would not share that because it's not my story to tell, it's their story to tell. And you've already, I'm sure, heard a lot of the stories that gradually are being told by the captives that come back. We're gonna hear much more stories as time passes. Not just from those that have not returned yet, but also from those that have returned and are not sharing a lot of what they have experienced. And this is totally understandable. But I can tell you that we were surprised by some of the responses. I just said that we have prepared to the return, and we thought, for example, that once they would return, they would feel physical contact. They would not want to talk. They would speak very quietly. They would not want to share their experiences, because this is the behavior that is typical for victims of violent events. And it was the other way around. The minute they came, they yearned physical contact with us, with the teams, with their families. They wanted to talk. They actually didn't stop talking. They wanted to share their experiences, to share their pain, to share what have happened to them. And that was surprising to us. As I said, we saw that they want to see their friends as fast as possible. A lot of them wanted to be around their friends to, again, experience joy and happiness, and they didn't want to be left alone. And that was surprising, and it was also, something that we felt happy about. We knew that there's a lot that still would come out later, that the trauma is very significant. We also saw that the physical damages are significant, but they were not as severe as we feared. They were bad, but they were less bad than we feared.
So, Itai, have you seen a change in the physical and mental condition of the hostages from the earlier ones to the most recent release?
So there has been many changes, but in general, I think it's important to say that no one hostage was similar to another. Their condition depended on where they were held, with whom they were held. So those that were held alone had A very different experience than those that were held together, both physically and psychologically. Those that were held above ground were slightly less bad as those that were held underground, where the conditions were significantly harsher, with less, of course, exposure to sunlight that has a major effect on your physical status. The fact that you don't know if it's day or night, the fact that you're only exposed to artificial light. That's very different than if you were held in an apartment above ground, even if you didn't come out of the apartment throughout that time. We had captives that were held alone in a dark room for the 50 days and haven't seen anybody and had almost no human interaction. Their state is very different than those that were held in a group of several hostages and that could talk to one another, those that were held with family members, the concern of what's going to happen to my family members that is with me on one hand, or the ability to gain some support from someone that you know that is with you. So there has been differences, not just between hostages that came back later and earlier, but also within the same group between the different hostages. You also know, or can imagine, that if there's a group of several hostages that is held together, not always with your captors give the same attitude to all of the captives. So you can be in the same group under the same condition, but there is a specific terrorist that's guarding you that has something specific against you or for you, and your whole experience is going to be different because he would give you more food or abuse you more. And so I don't think it's like the right way to say that there's a difference between like the group that came in now to the group that came in earlier. It's just each of them had such a difficult and very different journey throughout their captivity. And each of them is a separate story, and each of them is a separate situation and also in a separate condition.
So there's a so-called Stockholm syndrome. Those hostages who came to identify with their captors or were treated better, is the protocol going to be more difficult or easier for them?
So again, you know, if you're not very, very knowledgeable about the psychology of captivity, and I must tell you that before this, I knew nothing about it. I knew what Stockholm Syndrome is, and I saw the movie, which is a good movie. And so when you say Stockholm Syndrome, people think it's like black and white. The captive totally identifies with his captors, and he actually thinks they're good people. And that's not really the case. The case at the end that it's very complex. So a captive might have the feeling that the specific person that was guarding him was actually protecting him and trying to keep him safe. And for that, he might feel grateful to that captor. But still, this is a terrorist that has taken him from the home and has been watching over him while he's in captivity. So it's a very, very complex psychological situation. And we have to deal with that very, very carefully. You may theoretically, like imagine, and I'm not giving a specific story now, it's just a combination of a lot of stories of a lot of the captives. What happens to a captive that sees his captor that actually took care of him being like killed in the operation for his rescue or her rescue? That has an impact. Okay, and so that's part of the very complex situation that these people are at, and that us as professionals need to address in their care. And we know it's a gradual thing, and it takes time, and that's part of what we do in their psychological evaluation and also psychological treatment later as time passes. But it is much more complex than what you may imagine when you read about Stockholm Syndrome, or even if you see the if you see the movie, that's totally a different story than it is in real life.
Mm. Is Sheba taking a role in the continuing care of the hostages?
Definitely. So we think that we have a lot of the know-how and the best people to do that. And this is why we offer all the captives and their families continued care here for anything that they want, from their medical condition to their psychological follow-up and to the psychiatric follow-up that they might need. Some of them chose to stay treated at Sheba. Some of them chose not to get any further care. It's their choice. And some of them have we have transformed their care to other medical or professionals that live closer to where they are. You have to remember, some of these people have returned to communities that have been displaced to faraway places, and the care that they need is very intensive. So they need, some of them need to see someone every day, every other day, at least at the beginning. So coming over to Sheba is not always simple for them. We also offer them and still provide them telemedicine services 24/7. So whenever they need, they can go online with us, with one of our providers that's available for them 24/7. Someone would come over to their home, just for example, if they need blood tests. A designated person will come over to them. We're not going to drag them into the hospital just for that, because we believe that they deserve this after the experiences that they had. So definitely we take a significant role. I think we're gonna maintain that effort for as long as needed, and it's gonna be for a long time. But also, as I said, a lot is done outside of Sheba.
You know, everything in Israel is political, and there's been some noise that the hostages are not being properly cared for, but care is continuing to be provided.
So again, we are there to offer that. We're not forcing ourselves on anyone. And there has been a lot of confusion and a lot of difficulties for some of the captives in receiving care. You also need to remember that not all of them went through us. And a lot of them have very, very complex circumstances, and that makes it extremely complex. We're here, they know we're here, and we have offered services to any of the captives, also not those that did not return through us, and we continue to be there, as I said, 24/7 to whomever needs us.
Wonderful. I'm not looking for any specific names or instances, but in general, how are the returned children doing?
So it's a very complex question. Relatively, they are doing well. After like in anything, children recover better than adults, both physically and psychologically. The children are treated, and most of them continue follow-up, that's not the case for some of the adults returnees that have decided not to continue follow-up. But again, that's their choice to make. The children are more followed up, and they are gradually recovering. I had the opportunity to go as like the trip doctor on a trip to the amusement parks of Orlando with all the children that have returned and their families, a huge group, almost all the kids and teenagers that came back. We had a lot of fun. They had a lot of fun. And it was almost like going to this trip with kids that have not experienced captivity, despite the fact that we did have a lot of events that were challenging for them, like to go on a ride in Universal Studios for someone that has been in captivity is not always simple, with the noises, with the atmosphere, with the experience. But they bravely went through it, and most of them enjoyed it extremely. All of them enjoyed the trip, not all the rides. But being there with them was definitely extremely meaningful for me, and I'm sure for them and their families, it was a lot of fun.
Beautiful. What has been the impact on the staff of this experience, the staff who've worked with the hostages?
I think that's, again, a very good question.
That was my first good question.
No, again, a very good question, as I
Oh,
said.
good.
Um, everybody here in Israel are undergoing very difficult times. And it's very hard in the face of this hard reality to remain optimistic and to stay, within your elements. So I think, but I think that everybody that has been involved in the process of caring for the hostages actually gained a lot of strength and a lot of hope, because we were there and we were able to actually actively do something meaningful to correct this horrible situation, which I'm sure there's not one Israeli that does not feel responsible and that does not worry as to what's going on with the captives that have been there or are still there. So being part of the active effort of correcting this is a very significant experience and very strengthening, and also fills your heart with hope. Every time my phone rings, I kind of have like this millisecond that I hope, oh, maybe that's the call for the next batch. Fortunately, I had like already 2 opportunities where I was like called urgently to the hospital because of like these good surprises of hostages being released in the 2 operations that like brought us hostages back, not within the deal, and that is an amazing experience. Still, we are exposed to very, very hard stories, very difficult stories, very sad and tragic circumstances. But as I said, I think we are equipped to deal with those stories, and we have our own both personal support systems for each of us, but also we treat the team. So we have, as part of the protocols that we have created, we have also created the protocols to make sure that the team that's caring for the hostages has his ventilation moments and has a place to go to if they need to treatment or if they need to share the experience. And that also has worked out very well for us during the 8 months that we've been at it.
Have you personally made a special connection with any of the hostages in particular, returning hostages?
So I'm not going to tell you with whom, but there are many of them that are still in direct contact with me, that care for me and I care for them a lot. They are dear, dear people that have underwent, as I said, horrible circumstances, and my heart goes out to them. And I'm available to all of them 24/7. Some of them actually, I'm happy to say, they take advantage of that, and that's great.
What else do you want our audience to know about either what Sheba did or the hostages or the way forward?
So I think the most important thing is the fact that there are 120 more that are still there, and that we cannot sit and just wait for them to come back, because every second that goes away is another second that they are in this horrible situation, and their lives are at risk. Their health is definitely impacted. Their mental health is at risk, and we have to do anything that we can that is within our power, no matter if you are here in Israel or anywhere around the world, to make sure that they will come back. Here we're ready, really, in a moment's notice, to receive them and to make sure that they're going to get the best possible care as they return. But that's not enough. We just need them back here.
Itai, on behalf of all of us, I want to thank you for what you've done and what you are doing, your dedication, your passion. And everyone should know that there are 10,000 staff at Sheba. Itai is one of my personal favorites, but there's 10,000 staff, and the quality of the staff, the quality of the people is absolutely incredible. And if you want to support the work of the Safa Childrens Hospital and the work of Dr. Pesach, there's a QR code on the screen. You can go to our website, afsmc.org. And this is what we can do from here to support these amazing professionals is to provide the resources that provide them with equipment, training, etc.
Thank you very much, Brian. I would maybe add to that the fact that people join into these webinars, listen to the story and the stories, understand the state that we are here at, and even just by doing that, support us. That means a lot to us. These are indeed very hard times. I think a lot of people here in Israel feel that we are almost on our own, and knowing that there's a group of people that cares is very, very significant and really allows us to do what we do. So
you are
thank
not
you.
on your own. There are many, many, many people that care. We want to show it to you in the best way that we can, but Israel is supported. There are people that care, and we're so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And may your phone ring a lot and soon.
Amen to that.
Thank you, Itai.